I'd like to call the March 10th regular City Council meeting to order. And could I have Councilmember and former Mayor Kaplan please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let the record show that all council members are present. Is there any correspondence?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. That takes us forward to comments from the public. So our process is when I call your name, please come up to the podium, provide your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. If you have comments that exceed that time and you want to make sure we get them, we're happy to take them in writing, or you could follow up with an email at some other point. First person I have noted is Pamela McConville.
Hi, my name's Pamela McConville. I live at 18122 Westlake Desire Drive in Renton, Washington. I'm the lead court clerk of the Des Moines Municipal Court and have been for about 18 years. I'm here before you with my coworker Deborah Phillipson, requesting you do not approve the union contract between the court clerks, IAM Union, and the City of Des Moines. I have prepared a copy of the timeline of events along with attached emails that are placed in front of you. Deborah and I faxed and mailed a request to decertify from the union this morning, along with filing a copy of the decertification with the city. And this is why. This contract has been done under unfair bargaining, deception, discrimination against Deborah and myself. Since July, when Deborah and I tried to decertify, unfortunately we were too late. After trying to decertify, I was removed as negotiator by the union representative, Brandon Hemming, and it was agreed by our group I was to hold that position. Brandon removed and replaced me without my consent or a vote from the group. In August, when negotiations started, after every negotiation meeting, Deborah and I would ask what happened during the meetings, and every time we were denied by our representatives and Brandon. This happened throughout the entire negotiation process. Finally, in November, we received an email from Brandon stating he would like to have a meeting about vacation bidding. However, he refused to give us any other information. Deborah and I both sent an email to Brandon voting no to the vacation bidding. However, Brandon stated there was 2 yes votes, 1 undecided and 1 no, but this is still in the contract and his count is incorrect. We were notified that a tentative agreement had been reached and a vote would take place on February 29th. I asked Tony, the city manager, if Brandon had been directed by the city to have the vote on 2/29, and the answer was no. I asked on 3 separate occasions to please change the date of the vote due to having a previously scheduled appointment. Brandon would not change the date. For fear of not appearing on February 29th, which would mean a yes vote, we met with Brandon and our representatives. We voted no to the contract and no to striking against the city, and at no time did Brandon ever tell either one of us that by voting no to strike would mean the contract would pass. We were completely deceived by Brandon and his lack of disclosure. This is an unfair bargaining agreement. We have been deceived, discriminated against, and we have complete lack of confidence that this contract was negotiated under good faith. There are 4 clerks and 2 have been left out of the bargaining process. By council not approving this contract is one of our last recourses in an attempt for fair and equitable bargaining. We, at this time, request the council to not approve this contract and pull it from the consent calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Deborah Phillipson.
Hi, my name is Deborah Phillipson. I live at 1413 South 276th Place in Des Moines, Washington. I've worked for the City of Des Moines in the capacity of a court clerk for the last 15 years. I've come before you tonight to please request that you do not approve this contract between the court clerks and the City of Des Moines. Since the process in our union began, the morale in our office has been changed drastically. No one communicates between the clerks. The tension between the coworkers have been very tense, and it has been felt by not just us, but the people that walk through our office. We have no confidence in the IMA's bargaining unit. Brandon did not represent all of the court clerks, only 2 of them. We gave Brandon a list of items that the clerk wanted. Not one of them was in the contract. Brandon never kept us informed about the negotiations, even when we asked numerous times. Brandon asked the clerks of the bargaining unit not to share any of the negotiations with the rest of us. There's only 4 in our unit. When we voted for our representative, we voted that Pamela would be representing and Louise. We sent an email changing, Brandon sent an email changing that vote without our consideration or without any vote of the whole unit. The vote for the court clerk contract was unfair. I was out of the country from February 11th to February 29th. I was not given ample time to read the contract before I was asked to vote on it. We asked him many times to change the date. He refused. I had a doctor's appointment that night, and I was told that I could come and vote and leave. I do not take this process lightly. Brandon forced me to vote anyway with no explanation about the voting process. Had we known that we should have voted to strike, we would have not had the contract passed. Working for the court system for over 32 years, I know that the clerks cannot strike. So there was no confidence in Brandon's ability to represent us. I am requesting again that you not approve this contract, pull it out of the consent calendar. However, we are willing to work with the city and negotiate for ourselves. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you. That's all that have signed up. Is there anyone in the audience that has not signed up that would like to address the council?
Rick Johnson, Redondo Beach Drive South. Now that the city has acquired Mr. Watson's home, I did an unofficial poll as to what some of the residents on my Facebook page would like to see done with that property. Majority of it was for like a little general store, a cafe, somewhere maybe bait and tackle, but definitely a revenue source for the city. I hope you're not too hasty in your decisions with that property and that you take your time and a little effort into it before you just make your final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council that has not? Seeing no one approach, that takes us to board and committee reports. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Pennington.
Thank you. Attended the North Hill Community Club meeting earlier this week with Councilmember Kaplan, and gave a overview of the city and what was going on with the city, and so it was a very good meeting. Really appreciated being invited up there. We had our Public Safety and Transportation Committee meeting, and I'll refer to the chair for that report. And then tonight we had a Finance and Econ meeting. Again, I'll refer to the chair for those reports. And Rick, I know, at least I can speak for myself in terms of the property. I think that's a real unique piece of property. And I know that, at least I'll speak for myself, but in speaking with some of the other council members, I think there's a desire to look and see what the right thing is to do with that. So, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. Thank you all for coming out.
Also speaking to that, I don't think we're rushed to make a decision in regards to the use of the Wasson House. It's actually been our property ever since we acquired the beach park, though the use of it obviously turned over with Mr. Watson's passing. And, but council hasn't had any conversations yet, not in committee and not as a whole, on what we're going to do with that. And obviously, we're going to take our time on it before we make a decision. As Mayor Pro Tem Pina mentioned, we attended the North Hill Community Club on Tuesday night. It was a very good turnout, had a great opportunity to be able to talk to them about things that are happening in the city. Economic development, public safety, search for new city manager. What other topics? I'm not missing anything.
Public safety, well, I think you mentioned that, economic development.
Yep.
The usual group.
So, but it was good turnout, good questions, and everybody wants a grocery store. So everybody's in good company. Poverty Bay Wine Festival was last weekend. I attended on Saturday. Seemed like it was pretty good attendance, and lots of good wineries there. The music was good, and just, it's a great event, and I'd like to thank Rotary for the effort that they putting on that, Blues and Brews, and a couple other things, and the money that gets donated to the organizations in town. Greatly appreciated. And last thing I'd like to bring up is this past Monday was the 15th anniversary of the death of Master Police Officer Stephen J. Underwood, for whom our sports park is named. That incident is forever burned in my mind because of hearing helicopters and the sirens and the rest of it at 1:30 in the morning, and then because Bob Olander was out of town and Tony was acting manager, his calling at 5:30 in the morning and telling me that Underwood had died. And so what I'd like to say and remind everybody, as I have every year that I've been on council since that happened, that we need to appreciate the things that our officers do. They put themselves in harm's way all the time on behalf of public safety. They get put in the position of having to resolve domestic disputes and disputes between neighbors, things that, under different circumstances should be handled between the neighbors instead of escalating to the point that they do. So I just want to say that I appreciate the work that our officers do. And I appreciate the work that all of our employees do. Whether it's a road crew, I can't tell you how many people have been hit by cars speeding around a cone or something like that on the highways and even on some of the roadways around the state. So I'm appreciative of the work that our employees do and hope that they remain safe, keep their head up, and pay attention to what's happening all around them and not just the thing that's immediately in front of them that they focus on. So please thank the officers when you see them for the hard work that they do on behalf of the citizens of Des Moines.
I got to participate in the roundtable discussion at Sound City Association last night and represent our city. The only topic that came up that was relevant to us was discussing the methanol plant in Tacoma. Both Federal Way and Des Moines is hoping that Sound Cities Association would take a position on this, and they did agree that they would at least consider it. So hopefully within a month we'll know if they will at least take a position. Sound Cities is not the type of group that actually makes resolutions, but they can take a position and make that known. 3 council members from Federal Way were there, and most of the staff from Federal Way were there, basically giving their presentation to Sound Cities of what that was all about. And as I reported a couple of weeks ago, this project is on hold for the time being. There were a few cities that felt like they didn't need to be involved with something like that, or that Sound Cities didn't need to be involved. Basically, people in the northeast part of the county. And my simple argument that I've used before is just that of being a good neighbor. And the Port of Tacoma was not a good neighbor to Federal Way because they didn't even include them in the conversation. So I just asked all of the other cities represented in the room that if you had a neighbor that was building the largest methanol plant in the world right next door to you, wouldn't you want to be included in that conversation? And they agreed to that. So hopefully within a month we'll know if they will take a position, but it looks positive. And that's all I've got. Thanks.
On March 2nd, I attended a welcome reception for the new SeaTac Managing Director at the airport, who's replacing Mark Reese, Lance Little. It was well attended by many businesses, airline reps, tenants, port staff, and elected officials. Mr. Little's formerly with was Chief Operating Officer for Houston Airport, and that's made up of George Bush Intercontinental, William P. Hobby, and Ellington Airports. I believe he's going to be making his rounds around the cities, including Des Moines, so look forward to meeting him. He's a really great guy. I, of course, work there, so he is really, really a good managing director. Thursday, we had our Public Safety and Transportation Committee meeting. There were a number of items that were reviewed, including potential installation of red light cameras on specific intersections in the city, traffic impact fee updates, capital project updates, code enforcement duties, and several other items. I would like to say as chair that it was a very good meeting, and I would like to commend staff for the quality and the breadth of their presentation on these diverse items. There's a lot that they're doing, but there's a whole lot of information they provide that is extremely valuable and very detailed. Several of these items will be brought forth to the council in the future. Comment on the Poverty Bay Wine Festival. I got some stats from Patrice. It was really well attended, saw a lot of people there, a lot of friends, a lot of citizens that were there, and even from outside the area, which was really nice. They had 20 vendors, wineries, of course, one craft brewery, one liqueur vendor. The music was acoustical blues by Aaron Jones, Rod Cook, Kevin Jones, and Brian Butler. They were phenomenal. Food vendors were Fred Myers and Ivers, and the food trucks were Nimbles and Jennifer's Mexican food truck, and they're Des Moines residents, so that's really good to know. Attendance was 821 tickets sold, 170 volunteer shifts. That was awesome. And that was 150 more tickets than last year. So they netted $33,000 for Rotary charities. That was awesome. I saw you there, and that was great. March 8th, I attended a presentation on city economic development at Wesley Terrace. Our Assistant City Manager and Economic Development Director, Michael Mathias, gave a great PowerPoint presentation, and it really sparked some lively question and answers afterwards that Michael and I fielded. Some were really interesting, but that's a real lively group. That's my report.
Councilmember Nutting.
Excuse me. I had attended the Wine Fest on Saturday and managed to miss everybody else that attended it. I don't know how that happened, but had great conversation with a couple that just moved here from Auburn that are excited about getting involved, exchange numbers, and also the locals that we see. Had some great conversation there and some great beer from Airways. And then this evening, the Finance and Econ Development Committee met. We discussed the preliminary year-end financial, and we're looking right about where we projected for the year 2015. We also talked about siting of essential public facilities, and we directed it's going to expand some of the noticing and on a few things of concern, and that should be coming to council May 12th. We also took up recreational marijuana zoning, and that will be coming to council very shortly, and the recommendation from the committee is that we take no action at this time. There's some pending other things further south in an already zoned area. So the committee's recommendation is there's no action taken or to table it this time. And that's pretty much it. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you. Councilmember Musser.
Well, we're going to think we're a lot of wine drinking council members up here, but I as well attended the Poverty Bay Wine Festival, and year upon year I'm amazed at the dedication and the number of hours that the community volunteers put into making this event successful. It's just so well-run, the number of people that are in there, and every year it just gets better, and I think that when we lost the use of the landmark on the sound, everyone was a little concerned that it wouldn't be as robust as it had been, but I think it's as good as it ever was, and the addition of the food trucks this year was awesome. So I'm glad to hear that they were local vendors, because there were a lot of people out there giving them a lot of business, so that's great to hear. Tuesday night, we had the Municipal Facilities Committee meeting, had a good number of guests join us that evening as we were discussing the paid parking in the Marina floor. And it sounds like Joe and his team, together with a consultant from BST Associates, Brian Winningham, came forward. Mukilteo down at the lighthouse, their lighthouse park, implemented paid parking last year. So they've gone through a summer season, and they've kind of worked through all the kinks so that if we roll this out, we kind of know what their citizens were concerned with. They were able to implement parking in their park. I guess they have, the ferry docks there, the lighthouse park, their beach park area, with allowing every household in their city a free parking pass, free parking on the day of their farmers market, and when and then 100 reserved spots for marina tenants. And so we asked it was asked of this analyst to take kind of the feedback we heard when we did this last year. He applied the numbers to it, and he conservatively came back with 1 free parking pass per household in Des Moines, free parking on Saturday for the farmers market, 100 reserved spots for the marina tenants, and we'd still be looking at about $225,000 a year in revenue, and that's using the parking rates that we use down at Redondo currently. So we'll be having the full study coming forward to the council in April. Was that?
Somewhere in that time.
I think we'll come forward to the futures meeting when you guys.
I want to point out that the free parking for the farmer's market was both the Saturday and the Wednesday in his analysis.
Melissa, so is that, would that be like a placard that people hang and they could put it in any car, or is it a sticker for a windshield?
It depends on what style of parking we use. If it's the pay and display, then it would be something you would hang on your rear view mirror. If it is where you have to pull a ticket out of the ticket spitter to get into the lot, then it would probably be some sort of a card or a fob that you would use to make the gate open.
And would residents have to come to City Hall to get that pass? Or?
That's what Mukilteo did.
Right,
Okay.
and they did limit it to 1 per household. The consultant also talked about how Saltwater State Park and Dash Point State Park work, and they will give you they'll allow you to use 1 pass for 2 cars, but you got to write the license plate numbers on them so they know you're not passing it around anybody. So good information for us to have as we design a program, if we end up with paid parking at the marina, to do something for the residents in a way that it will be as flexible as possible. And I agree with Councilmember Musser. Hearing the Mukilteo experience gave us several things to think about.
So I think that this kind of round of discussions, I think it will be much more robust when it comes forward to council, because we've already, sent it back to staff once and had a whole round of comments from the community a year ago when we did this. And so I was really impressed with the amount of information that came forward, that I think we can put together a plan that does help us provide funding to maintain the public facilities that we have and is fair to our residents and takes into account the organizations that use our facilities. So I was very impressed with that. Scott did a great job giving us an update on the 2016 capital improvement projects coming forward. And then we also just had a very short conversation about, we directed staff at our budget retreat and as part of the budget process to cut back on our both janitorial and landscape and irrigation services during the 2016, and both our landscapers and our custodial, because staff doesn't do that. We have private provided services for those as part of our budget strategies, and both of those vendors have agreed to the reduced services. So I think the savings was $13,000 will be saved in landscaping and $9,000 saved in our custodial services for the year. So little drops in a big bucket, but every little bit helps. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Well, I guess I have to confirm that we all enjoy wine. I do, it's funny though, because I too attended the wine festival on Saturday. I didn't see anybody either. So,
Well, actually,
But-
that might be a good thing, because you could have said it was a quorum of the
yeah, well, it's true.
Can I add two things?
Please.
We haven't mentioned what some of the money goes to. Part of it goes to Music for Life, and quite a bit of it also goes to handing out dictionaries to third graders, which my oldest daughter was a recipient of one of those this year, and the Rotary takes time out of their schedule to take boxes of dictionaries to the elementary schools and hand them out to third graders every year. And so that's what some of the proceeds go to.
Yeah, I think, I again want to thank Rotary for all the work they do in the city of Des Moines. And all the work they're doing is for good causes, but they're also helping, I mean, the Wine Festival and the Blues and Brews Festival help create that destination draw into the city, and we do get a lot of people from outside the city. Every event that they have continues to grow, even though they had to reinvent the wine festival. And I think that's that's a real testament. So I want to say thank you to them. And then I'd like to indulge the council, ask the council's indulgence for a second. As part of my presiding officer's report, I became aware of a new program up at Highland College. You all have a document in front of you. It's called the RISE program. And I was contacted by the case manager, Marty Sanders, and as she told me about it, I thought it would be better if she came and talked about it instead of having me translate. So I'd like to introduce from Highland College, Marty Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor Pina. My name is Marty Sanders. I work in Workforce Education Services at Highland College, and we provide an array of funding and services for people who are pursuing professional and technical training and certificates. And RISE is a new program designed for people who want to start a new career but aren't quite ready to get started. Maybe they have some barriers that are keeping them from being successful in their job search or employment and training opportunities so far. So RISE is designed to provide wraparound services to help them be successful in their career. And we do that through comprehensive case management. We really identify and address those barriers that they have. And then there's a 6-week Strategies for Success class that is aimed to provide those soft skills that really all employers are looking for, like communication skills, conflict management skills, networking skills, things that everyone needs to be successful in the workplace. And then we provide individualized employment and training plans. So if people need more skills to start a new career, we provide that jumpstart into a training program. Or if they just need job experience, if they've been unemployed for a long time and need to build up their resume, we can provide paid and unpaid internship opportunities. And if they're just exploring where they want to go, we also provide possible paid and unpaid job shadowing opportunities so that they can explore different fields. We really want to get people into careers that they want to be in, that they will be successful in. And so RISE is targeted to people who are receiving basic food assistance, SNAP, also commonly known as food stamps. So they have to be receiving basic food assistance, and they have to either be a veteran, unemployed for a year or more, an English language learner, someone who's experiencing homelessness, or someone who owes back payment and child supports. So we have targeted services to address all of those things to help them be successful in their new career. It's a 3-year pilot program. It's funded through the Department of Agriculture, through DSHS, and it's being offered at 10 different organizations in King County and 4 counties in Washington State. So we're really lucky to have it right here in this city. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to share this new program. Thank you.
Are there any, Councilmember Kaplan?
We had conversations with President Birmingham and some others at the college about some of the new employers that are coming into the city, Green Corps, the hotel, and a couple of the others that are coming into the business park and are likely to spin off and move into the area. Have there been conversations yet about the possibility of using those as the end product in terms of after they've received that training and everything, or on an internship basis to help build the skill sets that you're looking to do through the program?
Thank you. There haven't been those conversations yet, but I definitely will start those conversations. Because it's a brand-new program, we don't yet have people at that stage. But we are, through the Workforce Development Council, they're organizing all of King County's job work-based learning opportunities, and so I will definitely address that as well.
Yeah, please
Thank you.
contact Green Corps in particular, and you should have a conversation with our Assistant City Manager and Economic Development Director, Michael Mathias, who's...
Michael, raise your hand.
So, because he's been having conversations with a number of the potential employers coming.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Just briefly, we've met with Judy Perry and Rich Shockey over there at the suggestion of Michael Pham. And we've also met with Workforce Development Council. So that's absolutely an ongoing process relative to workforce, so we'll plug that in.
Thank you. Okay, this takes us forward to the administration report.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before I have Danielle come up, I just want to, under emerging issues, next Wednesday, March 16th, from 5 to 7 p.m., we will be holding an open house with regards to the 268th Street Sidewalk Project. It will be held at the Woodmine Elementary School. If anyone has any other questions about it, you can contact our project manager, Tommy Owen. His email address is towen, O-W-E-N, at DesMoinesWA.gov, or his phone number is 206-870-6870. That's the emerging issue I have for tonight, so I'm going to turn it over to Danielle.
Good evening, Danielle Mason, Finance Director, and we have spreadsheets. So in the packet,
We would have been disappointed if you didn't have spreadsheets.
we got pictures, so that's even more fun than spreadsheets. So in the council packet, if citizens are interested on that, it is online and available. In there, I have a 11-page summary of our 100-page summary of our financial position for 2015. And so tonight, I'm just going to open up a few things and hit some highlights. So I can't tell from here. Let's see. So in the packet, there is the memos, but just hitting the highlights here. For the general fund, our revenues did exceed our expenditures for 2015, so this is good news and is a bit of a change from last year. So we came out ahead, $600,000. Our ending fund balance was a little over $1 million. To put that in perspective, our required minimum fund balance is $2 million. So but last year we ended with $600,000. So I think this is really good progress. Okay, so we're definitely going the right direction. We've made a significant improvement, but it just takes time to get all the way to where we need to get to. I want to talk a little bit about the budget process. Again, in the attachment, there are several long spreadsheets. And part of the reason that there's so much information here is because when I got here a year ago, one thing I kept hearing was, how are we doing on our budgeting? And so this spreadsheet actually is designed to kind of step us through several different budget processes. And so as I kind of explained here, we have the original budget. That's a legal authority. And so that says we cannot spend more than what we have approved in our original budget. As stuff happens during the year, we can come to council and explain what's going on. Council can set priorities, and you have the authority to revise and adjust that original budget. Okay, for the general fund, we didn't make any changes. And the reason we didn't make any changes is because revenues were lower and expenditures were both lower. So we didn't need any legal authority to do anything, because we were still well within that range. Then we have another budget, which I call the revised budget. So these legal budgets are external constraints. I see the revised budget as more as a management tool. Okay, so the revised budget, I, as a finance director, keep internally. And I keep it updated. So as things happen and go, I put it in the revised budget, so I kind of always have a current running projection of where we're looking at. So I don't come to council with that unless something pops out that requires a legal adjustment. So in the spreadsheets, and I can open that up, maybe. Let's see here. So here is our original budget for our revenues, and here is what we actually came in. So our original budget was reasonably accurate, okay? If you're talking about only $200,000 out of $18 million difference. Okay, and again, this is what I said, our original budget and our adjusted budget, these are the same numbers because we didn't need any legal authority to change. Our expenditures, our original budget was $17.8 million, and we actually came in less than that at $17.369. Okay, and so we were underspending, which we needed to because our revenues were also less. Okay, and then here's our revised budget over here. So this is kind of the running total. So staff was running pretty close. You're talking 2% on budget, 1%. That's very close. Been in the business, been in a lot of places. You're running that close, that's really close. Our original budget's 3%, our spending's 5%. That's well within normal range that I've seen in other cities. So I think we're on track to having a solid projection that is a reflection of reality. Another few numbers to look at here would be this revenues more than expenditures. So that's what this is. So this is what we saw on the highlight there. Originally, our original budget, we were hoping for $415,000, and we came in at $600,000. So then, looking at the other important factor that we kind of keep an eye on is our fund balance. Again, we've talked about the importance of reserves and the ability to provide cash flows and responsiveness as conditions change. So here we are in 2014. Okay, when we're running $17, $18 million of transactions through the general fund, having a reserve that is only $600,000 is inadequate. And we heard that from the former finance director, we heard it from the auditors, and you heard it again. So this is why council made changes. And again, this is the improvement as we got from there up to $1.3 million. So it wasn't, we were short a little bit from what we were expecting in our revised projections, and that's almost 100% attributable to the development activity. In fact, you can trace it to one development permit that didn't come in that we thought was going to come in. So again, it's the timing differences.
It did come in this year.
It didn't come in before December 31st, but yes, it did come in now this year. So again, and this is just the minimum reserve requirement that shows that we're making a down payment on there. We're not there, but good progress, good trend. Things are definitely looking better. Okay.
And the reserve requirement is based on our policies.
Yes, and good financial practice. Your policies are grounded in good financial practice. Okay, so the other thing I just kind of wanted to show here is, we've talked about it a little bit, but here's a picture as to the city's revenues come in, not all at once. They don't come in evenly throughout the year. So this is kind of a picture that shows what we've been talking about. This is a new graph that I want to use. I'm setting it up for 16 so we can kind of compare month to month what we see in 15 and 16. And so this will become part of the basis of the monthly reporting for financial information now. Here's our expenditures per month. So again, our revenues are going up. Our expenditures are much flatter. Now you'll see a big spike in December. The big spike in December is not because of Christmas. The big spike in December is because of accounting bookkeeping rules. And it's all technical reasons that that basically as we go throughout the year, we're kind of on one basis of accounting. We spend 1 month's worth of stuff at a time. In December, because it's year end, because of accounting rules, we suck some of those January payments back into December. So January is a little lower than normal and December is a little higher. But again, it's not that we're spending so much difference, it's mostly just the bookkeeping rules. So here's I find a very interesting graphic. So this is the M. And so the blue here is the revenues. This is when we get the revenues. And the red is how we spend our money. And so again, this is why these gaps here is why we need those reserves to help us carry that cash flow through. So remember this picture, I call it the M, because we're going to look at the Marina next. And the Marina looks very different. I can. So the Marina, ignore this one on the right. It doesn't really tell you much. Okay, but this is the Marina, and this is their revenues and how they get it. And you can see that the city has made the policy choice that they provide marina services using temporary seasonal staff to match their revenue. So because it's temporary staff and seasonal, and we don't pay them all year long, then the marina can much more precisely match their spending with their revenue sources. So this helps basically the cash flow, there's a good match. So this is the picture of the marina. This looks very different than the M of the general fund. So not everything that we do in the city is all the same. As you know, the city is very complicated. So the good news here is the blue line is always above the red line. This is what we like to see. That means we got more money coming in every month than we do going out. That differential is basically the amount of money that the marina has then to reinvest back in its capital program. Okay? Then the last picture I wanted to show you was the swim picture. Okay. So here is swim's M. And so swim, M, is kind of the same shape as the general fund, but much more extreme. And again, this is just the operating funds. I'm not talking about the capital fund. Okay. So the swim only gets its money twice a year, but unlike the general fund, who has some money coming in every month, the swim really doesn't. And so they have a much higher need then for cash flow as well.
And those spikes are attributable to when the property tax collections are in April and October?
Yes. Okay, and I just want to, we're almost done, just a couple more pictures. This is our tax revenue by source. This is our 10 years. This is part of our comprehensive annual financial report. We have a statistics section in the back, and we do 10-year trending. And what I like about this one is it just shows that all categories for 15 have improved. So that's good. It's not just one thing. Everything is responding, which is very good. Okay, this is another graphic that I wanted to show, and again, kind of give you, because this is a 10-year trend, kind of give you an update every year. So it was looking pretty dire, because this is the history. Again, we had much pain in 2008, and we were headed down again. Okay, and so this is 15 responding. We took corrective action, and now things are improving and on the upward trend. And then there's, where'd it go? One more. This one. Okay, and so this is the general fund revenues versus expenses. Again, the red line is the expenses. So this is the history of what our issues have been. This here is our revenues tapered off, but we couldn't control the spending in time to match our revenues. So this is a deficit, okay? Then we responded and we raised revenues, but that triangle is smaller than this one, so we never quite recovered. And then down here again, our revenues dropped, but our spending plateaued. Again, this is a deficit. And again, you got this little triangle here that says we did a little recovery, but that recovery is much smaller than this deficit. And so this is where we were headed again. We had another expenditure over our revenue sources. That created another deficit. And so here is 15. This is the recovery. This is us recapturing. So when people say, you know, why do you need more money than you're not spending that much? Why do you need it? And again, it's because we have to go back and kind of replenish the reserves to pay for those things that we have already spent in prior years. Any questions?
No, because we all read our packets like you told us to.
Good.
Thank you very much. Okay, before we move to the consent agenda tonight, we have a need for an exec session. So at this time, the council will be going into an executive session to discuss labor negotiations under RCW 42.30.140-4A for approximately 15 minutes. Using the presiding officer's authority, I will be pulling consent agenda item number 7 and old business item number 1.
And for the record, Your Honor, what that means is using the presiding officer's authorities to set the agenda. Those two items are simply being pulled off the agenda tonight and will not even be acted on. There won't be a motion or a vote by the council.
Okay, will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item 1, approval of minutes. Item 2, approval of vouchers. Item 3, annual multi-city human services funding program. Item 4, interlocal agreement with the City of Normandy Park for police services at special events. Item 5, parametrics task order assignment for low impact development LID integration project. And item 6, South 268th Street sidewalk improvements design task supplement. And that concludes the consent agenda, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
I believe the motion was made by Councilmember Nutting and seconded by Councilmember Kaplan. Is there any item that was read into the record that a council member wishes to approve? To pull, I'm sorry. Seeing nothing. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes 7-0. This brings us forward to our public hearing. Okay. Okay. I will now open the public hearing over draft ordinance number 15-176, amending the Pacific Ridge Commercial Zone mixed-use limitations. Grant Fredericks will give the presentation.
Thank you, Your Honor. Member of the council, Grant Fredericks, helping the Planning, Building, Public Works Department on a number of items, including the zoning code, Des Moines Creek Business Park, Sound Transit, and the Federal Way Link Extension. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to consider draft ordinance 15-176, amending footnote 50 on the permitted use commercial use chart to clarify the ground floor commercial requirements for mixed-use buildings in Pacific Ridge fronting on Pacific Highway and eliminate the inconsistency that now exists in our code with Chapter 18, 135-060. This item has been discussed with the Finance and Economic Development Committee, and the ordinance before you incorporates their recommendations. There's quite a bit of history on Pacific Ridge, as many of you know. We began work on that in 2000 with the Pacific Ridge Neighborhood Improvement Plan. In 2006, we tried to figure out how to inject some life into that vision and accelerate the redevelopment. We modified the code 4 times between 2007 and 2013 to try to build in more incentives for development. In 2014, the city attorney, working with Mike Conley, proposed a recodification of Title 18, which basically tried to make it a more contemporary municipal code and incorporated a number of changes that made it better. The code up to that time had basically been inherited from King County at the time of incorporation, so there was a lot of antiquated kind of language and structure in the code. So when the code was modified in 2014, we went through multiple iterations to try to get it all synced up, but we missed a number of items, including what we describe here as Note 50 on mixed use in Pacific Ridge. We developed this ordinance before you tonight for your consideration. We ran it by Department of Commerce for the required 60-day review. We issued our public notice in February, and before you tonight is the amendment, which is action requiring City Council review. The inconsistency that we're dealing with here is illustrated on this slide. Has to do with residential development in the commercial zone. And the code now indicates that dwellings may be located on the ground floor of buildings in the commercial zone. And it further provides for buildings that are part of a multi-building complex for them to be exclusively residential in the commercial zone. But elsewhere in the code, it says, as indicated in the lower part of the slide, only structures containing only residential uses are not allowed in this particular zone. So one part of the code says they are, and the other part of the code says they're not. So the language which we're proposing for your consideration tonight basically shows the new language that's highlighted in red there. This is kind of at the direction of the Finance and Economic Development Committee, saying that on buildings fronting on Pacific Highway, at least 75% of the ground floor has to be dedicated to commercial uses, and that dwellings cannot be located on the ground floor. Now, what is unsaid here is that there may be some residential support uses on that ground floor. They may be a mechanical electrical space or elevators serving the upper residential floors. So there is some ability to have something other than strictly commercial there. But we're trying to maintain the priority for commercial uses. It goes, Note 50 goes on to provide some authority for the city manager or the city manager's designee to kind of waive or modify the requirements of this mixed-use requirement if it makes good business sense and if it's consistent with the general legislative intent of the council with regard to that ground floor use.
And my interpretation of that doesn't mean that I can now allow residential on the first floor. What it means is that that 75% number, I might be able to reduce that some if other parts of the development have more commercial space on them than they're required to have.
And then the sub C at the very bottom is the current municipal code limitation that basically does not allow any residential use in the commercial zone north of South 216th. And the council has considered changing that a number of times and has elected to maintain that limitation. So the motions for the council's consideration are first to suspend 26A, to consider this ordinance on first reading, and then the motion number 2 is indicated.
Thank you. It's now time for comments from the public on amending the Pacific Ridge Commercial Zone mixed-use limitations. Comments are made from the podium. Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak, 5 minutes for organizations. No one has signed up to speak, so I will call 3 times. Is there anyone who didn't sign up who wishes to speak? Second call. Is there anyone who didn't sign up who wishes to speak? Third time. Is there anyone who didn't sign up who wishes to speak? At this time, it goes over to the council for questions. Councilmember Kaplan.
Is there a reason structurally, is there a reason why the ordinance is structured the way it is, rather than just eliminating or the 50 footnote and having the other section of the code stand, or echoing it, something along those lines?
Well, there's a whole series of kind of footnotes in the commercial use chart. Some of them apply across through all zones. Some of them apply to specific zones. It's kind of, we tried to basically maintain the same legislative direction and restrictions in each of the zones. And this is the kind of the approach we kind of came up to. I think if that were to be I guess technically it could be eliminated, but I think it's a little cleaner this way.
Footnote 50, I think, has some information in it that council wants to keep. For example, the part that says no residential use is permitted north of South 216th Street. If you eliminated footnote 50, you say that mixed use is an allowed use in PRC. That would mean, so you at least have to keep that part. The other thing we heard is council wanted to make sure that we maximize the commercial spaces on those properties that front Pack Highway or front 216th. So that's why we amended footnote A to say it's got to be at least 75% for those parcels that front those pieces of property. And then B, we completely changed it, understanding that a hard number like 75 might create some problems, but as long as the legislative intent is met, we could modify that some.
So the whole purpose of the footnotes are these are the specific limitations that apply to in each particular case. So in Pacific Ridge Commercial, mixed use is an allowed use, but there are limitations and restrictions, and so that's.
And then my second question is, did you draw the short straw because you were here when we adopted the initial zoning?
Perhaps that was the reason.
Well, remember, he was in the military, and they used to say, do I have a volunteer? And everyone steps back, and the one guy who forgets to step back is the volunteer. He forgot to sit back.
Or alternatively, you'll keep being drug up here until you get it right.
Okay, so that's actually one other question I was going to have. Have we looked to see if there are other inconsistencies other than this one? I mean, this one stands out because our original intent was to have commercial in the commercial zone. Mixed use was kind of a hold your nose kind of thing when we did it. And having buildings that were entirely residential was entirely out of the realm of what we wanted in a commercial zone. So fixing that, it makes sense. But are there other things that we've noted or?
There are a number of other things, and we discussed with the committee very briefly tonight, the Finance and Economic Development Committee, a proposal that we made, which the committee endorsed, which was to bring forward an ordinance that would deal with about 40 different omissions, inconsistencies, errors, just to try to get the code cleaned up to the extent that we believe it needs to be.
4-0?
Sir, I'm sorry?
4-0?
40, yeah.
And not just in the Pacific Ridge Code, it's.
No, it's throughout the Title 18.
No, well, this is specific to Pacific Ridge, and.
Yes.
And that's my concern, is just making sure that this one area we're not having to come back to over and over and over again to rectify, anyhow.
Yeah, I don't recall anything on the list, anything else on our housekeeping list that is Pacific Ridge related.
Are there any other questions? At this time, we're past the public comment. I'm sorry. Well, this is very out of order, and normally I would say no, but tonight, why didn't you ask the one question?
Commercial properties facing 216th and F Highway. Is it, how far on 216th is it? Down to the post office or all the way down?
No, it's only in the Pacific Ridge commercial zoned property, and the Pacific Ridge commercial extends north of 99, about halfway, I believe, to the freeway, and south it only extends down to basically on the south side of 216th, it extends down to basically the back line of Bartell's, and on the north side it extends, Pacific Ridge commercial extends down to 24th.
I will now close the public hearing. Is there a motion? Councilmember Kaplan.
Move to suspend Rule 26A in order to enact draft ordinance 15-176 on first reading.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Kaplan, seconded by Councilmember Nutting. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 7-0. Councilmember Kaplan.
Move to enact draft ordinance number 15-176, amending footnote 50 of DMMC 18.52.010B, permitted uses, commercial use chart, to clarify the ground floor commercial requirements for mixed-use buildings in Pacific Ridge fronting on Pacific Highway South, and eliminate the inconsistency with DMMC 18.135.060.
Second.
I'm going to give that one to Councilmember Bangs. I've got to split the ties. What can I do? Okay. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Kaplan.
As I mentioned before in my question to Grant, it was never intended to have residential property in the commercial zone. And just to clarify, basically it's all the property that fronts the west side of Pacific Highway South, and then all the property east of Pacific Highway South, north of Kent Des Moines Road, and south of 216th, plus the commercial area where the Safeway is essentially and the business park. That's part of the, or excuse me, not the business park. The Fernie and Ono properties are part of that commercial zone, Pacific Ridge commercial zone. Again, we never intended for purely residential buildings to be built in the commercial zone, and this came up a number of times, including the time where people actually asked us to expand the commercial zone and yet wanted us to allow residential buildings to be built in it. And we were very clear then, look, don't ask us to expand the commercial zone if all you want to build is purely residential building. So I'm glad this is getting cleaned up. I'm hoping there isn't anything else in Pacific Ridge that's of this size or potentially problematic. We've spent so much time on going through here, making adjustments and changes, and hopefully we're at a point where people will just come forward with their projects, and that'll be the end of it. So I commend it for adoption.
Any other comment? Okay, all those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, I will now read this into the record. An ordinance of the City of Des Moines, Washington relating to land use and the development regulations for the Pacific Ridge area and amending DMC 18.52.010B permitted uses on the commercial use chart. Okay. Yeah. That takes us forward to new business, and with the council's indulgence, I'd like to take item 2 first, and that's the council authorization for replacement of copiers.
Okay, good evening. What we're talking about tonight is that we have about 11 copiers. We have 11 copy machines that were leased 5 years ago, and they reached the end of their lease term. So the question is what do we do about that? Do we go ahead and renew the lease, or do we want to consider purchasing them? And so
And to be clear, we are talking about getting new copiers, whether we lease them or purchase them. We're
The
not
old
just
copiers
renewing the
go
lease
away.
on the old ones, because one of them, I think the one at the PD just blew up, and they told us they can't fix it. They don't have replacement parts, or they'd be very difficult to get.
So we are looking at, under the state contract, and we are looking at a different brand of copiers. And these new copiers are Canon copiers, and they should and are hoping and expected to have a longer life than the copiers that we were leasing previously. So there's some financial considerations in whether we lease or purchase. So basically, the attraction of the lease and why we did the leasing before was because it doesn't take that upfront out-of-pocket cost. As you saw earlier, our reserves were very low. We had no money. We really didn't have much of an option at the time as to whether to lease or purchase. As we also saw, our fund balance has recovered somewhat, so that does provide us an opportunity. So even though our fund balance isn't what we want it to be yet, this is a good use of fund balance. This is why we want reserves, and I'll show you why. So our option is if we leased these copy machines, and if the shorter the lease, yes, you get a brand-new machine sooner. Okay, but then you're trading one in, and then they've got to do something with it. So they charge you more the shorter the lease, because it's really not the useful life of the copy machine. So we could do a 4-year lease, we could do a 5-year lease, or we could purchase it. So looking at if these copy machines lasted us 5 years, then our lease cost under a 4-year lease would be $140,000 for that 5-year time period. If we had a 5-year lease, then they're charging us less per year, and it would be about $113,000. If we bought it, it would be a one-time cost of about $93,000. Okay, and so even under a 5-year time frame, we would, which is what we had the last time, if we bought them now, invested our money now, we could save $20,000. That's like a return on investment of $20,000. That's a better return than I can get on anything else that we can invest our city money in, okay? So, and if perchance this actually lasted 6 years, then we're looking at saving $48,000. And it's conceivable that they may even last 7 years. And if they do last 7 years, we could be saving $75,000 or $110,000, depending on your option, or basically 81% of that purchase price. So if we chose to invest our reserves in the copy machines instead of leasing them, then that savings between that annual lease cost and basically what we would be paying out would almost pay for the set-aside then. So now we can be smart with our money. We can use that differential and start putting a little bit aside for the next 7 years each year, so that next time when we buy, we don't have to come up with $90,000 out of fund balance. We would add it to our computer replacement fund, put a little bit aside each time. And if they don't last all 7 years, let's say they last 6, we've now accumulated most of the funding that would be needed to do a purchase the next time. So that's why staff's recommendation is to go ahead and invest fund balance into the purchase of the copier, but we could consider leasing. So that's the council choice.
So with a lease of any equipment, my assumption is there's a service agreement, so that they can come under that lease agreement to maintain these copiers. What do you get if you purchase it outright?
The maintenance agreement is identical as to whether we lease it or whether we purchase it. It's a separate agreement, and it's independent of our choice.
So if we purchase it,
We would buy a maintenance agreement, and they would charge us on a per-page cost. That's the way they price their maintenance agreements, that you pay a certain amount per page.
And then you said taking the money from ending fund balance as opposed to out of the equipment replacement account or what have you.
Yes.
Why ending fund balance as opposed to the replacement account?
Because the replacement account's pretty much dedicated to police car replacements. We don't have an extra $100,000 in the equipment replacement fund to purchase that.
We have vehicle replacement, but we don't have, so that would come out of the same account?
So right now, our computer replacement fund and our vehicle replacement fund are underfunded. And they're pretty much, the funds that are there are already dedicated to the purchases for pre-scheduled things. So there really isn't that opportunity to really take that money from there. So it really is pretty much looking at the general fund reserve, of which the general fund would then benefit from the savings.
and just to
Councilmember Beck?
clarify, so when we lease it, when we're done leasing, we just return it. When we buy it, after it's used up its full depreciated life, we're stuck with it, and we have to surplus it and scrap it or sell it for whatever we can get, and then we're looking at another one, right?
Yes.
Basically.
Yes, but when you go to buy a new one, oftentimes you might get a little bit of a credit from the company you're buying from.
Trade in.
Or a trade-in, or even they'll just say, we'll take away the old one and put in the new one, and the old one, we get nothing for it, but at least it goes away.
And usually we don't have to pay a disposal cost on it, at least, yeah.
Councilmember Resser?
So I understand that the police department's copier, printer, scanner is no longer operational. What's the condition of the others? Is it, I mean, I understand that in this day and age of public records displays or requests, really thick board packets.
We'll have our
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think ahead that if we're buying now instead of leasing, do we have the ability to buy one now for the police department and then continue on with the others and then replace them?
For the police department one right now, since it's still currently under lease, they brought a loaner in there to keep us going until we do something for the new copiers. As for the condition of the rest of the fleet, I'd say half of them are poor to really poor. Probably in the past few months, I've become very good friends with some of the sharp copier technicians that I've seen around the city quite often. So I think that's why we went with the 5-year lease, because it's pretty, we've experienced in the past that 58 months into a 60-month lease, it's time for new copiers.
And just for the sake of perspective, what's the average number of copies each one of these copiers runs in a month? Because I think a lot of people will look and go, wow, $25,000 a copier and this and that. But then I don't think a lot of people understand just how much paper City Hall generates.
I think our city clerk could give you how much she generates just for the council.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't have exact numbers, but
How many do you print for just this?
I print 11 packets for council meetings, and they're roughly 200 pages, 100 pages, double-sided, 3-4 times a month. So that's quick math right there.
And remember, most of our copiers also double as printers. So I print something from my desk, I can go to the small printer that we share with Michael and our admin assistant, or I can send it out to the copier printer that Bonnie uses for the.
That is true. We have, when we got this latest round of copiers, I did retire a large number of the standalone printers that were around the city, and people print the copiers mainly now. And we use the copiers. They also have scanning capabilities, so they're heavily used as scanners right now as we strive to go or try to get more stuff in electronic format.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yeah, I move to approve entering into a purchase contract for 11 copiers in the amount not to exceed $92,942, including tax, with Copiers Northwest, and authorize city manager to negotiate and sign a contract substantially to that effect.
Second?
Motion made by Councilmember Kaplan, seconded by Councilmember Mussiner. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Councilmember Kaplan? No, that's it. That's it. Okay, got that one. I thought there were 3 here. My mistake.
We wanted to give you your options.
And you definitely did. Okay. This takes us forward to Local Government 101, Part 4, the Marina. Staff presentation by our Harbor Master, Joe Dusenberry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Joe Dusenberry, Harbor Master. The staff is presenting this material as part of the City Government 101 program. The goal of the program is to give the City Council and the residents of Des Moines information about the organization and function of city government. Because the Marina is financially a separate entity within the city government, and it strives to operate as a business, this information about the Marina is presented in the context of the national and regional marina and recreational boating industries. Earlier, the Finance Director presented the current financial information for the Marina, so my presentation will focus on regional and national data. At the national level, marinas always on or adjacent to the water have varied physical shapes and sizes, offer a diverse range of services, and lend themselves to different ownership arrangements. It is estimated that there are over 10,000 marinas in the United States, providing about 35,000 full-time jobs and many more part-time jobs. Because of the seasonality of boating in much of the country, the total number of slips in the industry is difficult to determine, but estimates are that there are over a little more than 1 million slips for boats in this country. That equates to about 3 jobs per 100 slips. The industry is fragmented, meaning that there are very few big operators. Nationwide, about 70% of marinas are privately owned. A very small fraction are yacht clubs and condominiums, and the remaining 30% are municipal, state, and federal government facilities. On the West Coast, the split between private and publicly owned is probably a little more even than that. Marina industry revenues in the U.S. for 2015 were about $4 billion. Economists estimate the multiplier value for non-tourist-oriented marinas, which we would consider ourselves to be between 2 and 3, meaning that for every dollar spent at the marina, that dollar generates $2 or $3 of economic activity in the community at large. Related businesses like restaurants, clothing, supply stores, gasoline stations, repair shops, and others benefit from the extra spending that the slip holders represent. Recreational boating really started after World War II. Industry used the construction techniques for aluminum and fiberglass developed during the war to mass-produce durable, low-maintenance boats, and the growing middle class had the discretionary income to buy them. Starting in the 1950s, the national marina and boating industries grew fairly constantly, enduring several shocks along the way. The oil embargo, higher fuel prices, double-digit inflation, and high interest rates from the 70s and early 80s, along with the expansion of environmental regulations, tended to dampen the growth in both industries. By the late 1980s, sales of recreational boats in the U.S. topped out at about 500 units per year. You can see from this graph that we have here.
500,000 units per year.
I'm sorry, 500,000 units per year. You can see from this industry, or this graph, how it's been kind of there's a pretty sharp decline and then kind of a general decline. This is the area we're in now. Last 4 or 5 years, you can see that there's been a gradual upswing in the total units, new units sold. In 2015, sales of new powerboats totaled about 180,000 units. Nationwide marina occupancy rates have been improving the last 4 years also, but gross profits have not increased as much. You can see from these graphs, mainly because expenses kept growing during the recession, but revenues were flat. These graphs represent a national survey showing the percentage of marinas reporting occupancy, information about occupancies and profits. So you can see in 2014, in terms of occupancy, about 40% of marinas reported that their occupancies were higher than in previous years, and on the other side, in 2014, about 50% of marinas reported that their profits were a little bit higher. In the local marina industry, the development of the marina industry in the Northwest essentially mirrored the rest of the nation, with salmon fishing being an additional driver for growth. At the peak of recreational salmon fishing in the 1960s, it was common for boaters to log between 1 and 2 million boat days a year. A boat day meaning one person in a boat on the saltwater for a period of time on a specific day. That equated into very long lines at launch ramps and launching facilities around the Sound. The Puget Sound is a unique body of water that is large but still relatively sheltered and safe. The fact that it has marinas that provide easy access has contributed to the growth of boating clubs and groups. At last count, there are over 200 active boating organizations around the Sound. The challenging topography of the Puget Sound, along with the fact that 60% of the tidelands in the state are privately owned, limits the number of sites available for marinas. The larger marinas tend to be located in the urban areas and are considered home port marinas. That is, they have a year-round moorage customer base. The destination marinas tend to be smaller and are usually located in less populated areas like the San Juans or out around the Hood Canal. Destination marinas have a more seasonal moorage customer base and have lower off-season occupancy rates. Until the recession of 2008, 2010, there were not enough slips in the 30-foot plus range to meet the demand in the Puget Sound. After the recession, the supply and demand are more equal. But even before the recession, the number of small 26-foot and less boats in the saltwater was declining, largely due to the decline in salmon fishing opportunities, and occupancy rates and slips less than 30-foot long were falling. This is a chart showing Washington State boat sales, all sizes. After several years of decline, new and used boat sales have increased for 3 years in a row, following the national trend. The sales of specialty watercraft are also increasing, similar to the national numbers. And you can see part of the problem out there in the industry is that the sale of new boats is still a very small number. The new boat sales are represented by the black portions of the peaks, and even for 2014, with sales of somewhere around 7,000 units, very few of those were actually new boats. Most of them were used. For the entire Sound, current occupancy rates are about, on the far right hand of this graphic, 93% for peak season and 80% for off-peak season. For the central Puget Sound, which is on the far left side of this graph, current occupancy rates are 94 peak season and 84 off-peak. The Des Moines Marina rates are 99% peak and 81% off-peak. To summarize, nationally and regionally, boat sales and the marina occupancy rates are recovering but are still not back to pre-recession levels. Regionally, sales of mid-sized boats, 27 to 34 feet, are showing encouraging growth, but the absolute numbers of sales are still small compared to the pre-2007 numbers. The current occupancy rates for the Puget Sound regions is 93% peak season and 80% off-peak. Most marinas in the Sound are reporting that over the last 2 years, occupancy rates for boats 31 feet and longer have increased slightly, but that occupancy for boats under 31 feet has declined. The opportunities for salmon fishing continue to decline, but cruising, both by individuals and clubs, is growing and is now the primary saltwater activity around the Sound. This slide shows the percentage of the breakdown in the percentage of the responses to the question, is the worst over? This was a survey that went out in the fall sent out by the NMTA, and as you can see, in 2015, about 50% of the marine operators said that they thought the worst was over, so which is slightly more. As for the Des Moines Marina, in the mid-1960s, a group of Des Moines citizens realized that the shorelines in front of the city were one of the few places between Seattle and Tacoma where a marina could be built. They succeeded in convincing their fellow citizens on the merits of the project, and by 1968, the city had assembled the tidelands and secured the financing to build a marina. The original construction cost was about $3.5 million, and the money was raised by selling bonds. At the time, the city took advantage of a federal government program run by the Department of Housing and Urban Development to help sell the bonds. The HUD program essentially guaranteed the price and therefore the interest rate that the bonds sold at. In other words, the city determined that they would have to sell the bonds at or below a 4% yield rate to make the project work, and the agency essentially guaranteed that. The bonds were placed in the private sector, though. Those bonds were paid off. I think actually we refinanced those or refunded a lot of those bonds in 2002, or the last of those bonds, but they were 40-year revenue bonds. The only security for the bonds was the marina facility itself and the revenues produced by the marina operation. The bondholders did not have any claim on other city funds or the city's taxing authority. Nationwide, pure revenue bonds didn't work out real well and essentially went out of existence many years ago. When the marina opened in the spring of 1970, the city set it up as an enterprise fund. In the 46 years of the marina's operations, no tax revenues have been used to support the facility or its operations. The debt service and the operating costs of the marina have been entirely paid for out of revenues generated by the marina's operations. In the marina, or in this region, the Des Moines Marina is considered a home port. It has a relatively stable year-round moorage base with 730 in-water slips and 105 upland storage spaces. The marina is a mid-sized facility, but it is a full-service marina with a fuel dock, boatyard, and guest moorage facilities. The marina was originally designed to facilitate recreational fishing as its primary use. Around 2000, the city adopted a master plan for the marina that embodied the decision to shift the focus from the marina's operations from fishing to the fuel and guest moorage businesses. Marina revenues increased from 2000 to 2005 and then flattened out during the recession. By 2012, revenues were trending upward, and again by last year, 2015, all revenues, especially moorage and guest moorage, fuel sales were back to pre-recession levels. As far as the current conditions of the marina, about a year ago, the staff and representatives of the Marina Tenants Association and other community organizations went through a traditional strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. Here's a summary of some of the things that we came up with through that process. As far as strengths go, even though the Des Moines Marina is located right in the middle of the greater metro area, By water, it's relatively isolated. The nearest comparable marinas are 18 miles away in Seattle or 12 miles away in Tacoma. The marina's market area is a semicircle lying to the east with a radius of about 12 to 15 miles. This area encompasses several 100,000 people and thousands of boat owners, which really is the reason for the next one, is the marina has a 98 to 99% peak season occupancy rate and an 81% off-season occupancy rate, a little above the rates for the whole region. The Marina Fuel Dock is the price leader in the Sound and sells more fuel than any other recreational marina in Washington. The market area for the fuel is quite a bit larger. We estimate our market area for the fuel dock is about a 25-mile radius. We get boats from anywhere north of the Narrows all the way up to north of Seattle. And the independently operated boatyard has a great reputation and brings customers in from all over the Sound for the Mid and South Sound. In terms of weaknesses, aging of critical parts of the facility. The floating docks are nearly 50 years old, and some persistent problems are developing, especially with the roof structures and electrical systems. About 800 feet of the original timber bulkhead was replaced in 2010, but more should be replaced soon, specifically the bulkhead around the north parking lot. Additionally, the occupancy of the 20, 24, and 28-foot slips continue a slow but persistent decline. Opportunities. The upgrades to the north end of the marina in 2010 were intended to make the area more inviting to the non-boating public and facilitate the guest moorage business. To say the least, the results have exceeded our expectations, and the increase in the number of people using the north end of the marina could be a catalyst for some further development on the marina floor. Additionally, the 2010 project moved utilities to make development pads on the marina floor and to create room for the expansion of the boatyard, so infrastructure is mostly in place for future development. Threats, bigger boats are selling, particularly along the coast. Kayaks, paddleboards, and jet skis, on the other end of the spectrum, are up nationwide and in the region. But the number of boats needing a slip continues to decline as the middle continues to drop out. That is, the boats 24 to 28 feet long. Another threat is the aging demographics of boaters. Over the last 15 years, the average age of boat owners, especially saltwater boaters, has increased by more than 10 years. This essentially means younger people are not coming into boating. This is a trend that started before the recession and combined with the first threat that we were just talking about, makes planning especially difficult. We know that it's clear that larger slips will be needed, but we don't really know how many, so overbuilding is a threat. It is also not clear if the younger people buying kayaks and other specialty products will stay in boating and buy up like future generations did, or previous generations did. I'm sorry. In conclusion, after a relatively stable industry that was relatively stable for a long time, the marina industry is changing. During times of change, it's easy to forget that change is the norm, not the exception. The future of the Des Moines Marina will only be limited by our ability to adapt to this change and our willingness to reinvest in the facility. People will continue to want to be by and on the waters of the Puget Sound. What activities that desire will encompass and what amenities and services will be needed is not entirely clear, but it is clear that whatever the activities are, they will require access to the water, and because public access to the Sound is so limited, the marina will continue to be an essential part of our community. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Kaplan?
I've actually just got a comment. There's something, it doesn't matter whether it's been visitors from boating clubs or people who are in the marina, everybody's complimentary of you and your staff in terms of the service that's provided. And to me, that's the number one thing that helps to distinguish any business is how people are being treated and how people are being interacted with. And so continue to keep doing a good job of essentially treating people as customers and addressing their needs. Obviously, we've got long-term needs we have on the capital end of things to the degree we're able to leverage funds from the state or otherwise to try and get some of these capital projects going, or be able to at least help defray the amount that we have to bond in order to do some of the work that needs to be done, the better. So I know that municipal facilities has been taking a look at that, and we're going to have to face that at some point in the near future in order for us to get the next part of it done. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Beck?
I want to echo that, Joe. This is one of the success stories of our city, and you are doing a good job, so thank you. So on the debt, it was built in 1970. We did a 40-year bond, and then you mentioned we did a refi. How long until that refi note, or whatever it is paid off, and we're totally debt-free on that?
I think the refunding was that part of the 2008 issue? Yeah. Two issues that are there now. Yeah, one will be paid off in 2022, I believe, and the other in 2028. They're about equal, about $4 to $5 million each.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. At this time, the council will be going into another executive session to discuss labor negotiations under RCW 4230140-4A for approximately 15 minutes. When we come back, we will adjourn the regular council meeting. Our next council meeting will be on March 31st, and at this point, we are adjourned into executive session. Member Banks, any discussion?
Well,
I'll recognize Councilmember Musser.
four score.
All those in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. We are adjourned.